All right, Pouring Nation, the easiest way to do the acrylic paint pour swipe technique is with silicone oil. The reason I say that is, yes, there are some drawbacks to silicone oil, and you will hear that it's harder to clean this off of your painting once it dries to do a varnish. However, again, this is going to be the easiest way for you to do an acrylic paint pour, but there's a bunch of things you need to know to get the best results with your pour. So I'm going to show you how to do an acrylic pour swipe the best way I know how. So the first thing, as you can see, I've made up these paints. They're all creative inspirations. All of these are made 1 part paint to 2 parts pouring medium, and my pouring medium to start out with is 70% glue, 30% water. I'm using Craftsmart white glue. Elmer's Glue All works great. School glue does not work as well, although it will work. Same thing with clear glue. I haven't had some good results. Most of the white glues out there will work great. If you're not in the United States, again, you want a PVA glue. All of those will work good. The reason I do 70% glue and 30% water is just because it's so thick. This turns it into a consistency where when I mix it, 1 part paint, 2 parts pouring medium, I get a thick consistency, and then I only have to add a little bit of water to get the different consistencies. But if I would mix it straight, I'd have to add a ton of water every time, and it just cuts down on the amount of mixing that I do. This will also work with Floetrol. Not all pouring mediums will actually work with silicone, and I did this video that I'll link above where I compared 11 pouring mediums together, and I did put silicone in all of them to show you which ones accept it well and which ones don't. So the first thing I did is I made up a big tub of thick paint and then partitioned it down into these cups. This one has a little T on it because this is the thin paint. This one has an M on it because this is the medium consistency. So I have medium consistency, thin consistency, and thick consistency paint. And as you can see, they started out all 45 grams. So 15 grams of paint, 30 grams of pouring medium. And I added the most water to the thinnest, so you can see it has the most. Here, let me show you a color that's easy to tell. You can see here that it definitely has more water because of how full if I started with the same paint and pouring medium and I add more water to make it thinner, obviously I'm going to have more total mix. And the reason this matters is because the thickness of your paint is going to determine what your cells look like and how well they stay when they set up. Anytime I do a painting, I like to test first. And I want to show you how I test. And I made this board just like this so I can move it away quite easily. So I love these Lolly Vefe mats. I have been saying Lolly Vefe. I actually talked to Adriana that runs Lolly Vefe, and you actually do say it Lolly Vefe. I love these mats just because the silicone mats, you can kind of see over here, I have some paint up here, but I can paint on here, let it dry, and then I just peel it right off. So it does cost a little money to get these. I have 2 of these big, huge ones. These are the jumbos on my table here. I have one here and one underneath. And then I bought a couple of these, I think these are 20-inch rounds, if I recall correctly. And I love them. They fit over my cake spinner, and it just makes everything easier. But for doing tests like I'm going to do here, it's even better. So first of all, I just want to show you, I'm going to use the really thin just to start out with. What I want to see is, we're just going to do a teeny tiny example here of a little bit of each of these paints. Again, this is the thin. Before I do every pour, I experiment. I make sure my colors are going to mix like I want them. I make sure the effects I'm going to get are like I want them. So that's what I'm going to do here. This has no silicone in it. I'm just going to do a quick swipe. And as you can see with glue and my white paint with these are Creative Inspirations paints, I get a little bit of cells. And if I torch that a little bit. So that's one way to get cells. But now what I want to do is show you what happens when I do put silicone in these. Now, You can either put silicone in your white or you can put silicone in your colors. Both work great. You're going to get a slightly different look there depending on what you do it, and I want to show you that here really quick. So I'm just going to put a little bit of this paint in here. And again, it's nice for me to just do a little bit of testing here. I'm going to use my silicone oil. Generally, you want 1 drop per 2 ounces of paint. I have way less, but I have this nifty dripper here, and normally I do 2 or 3 of these drops to be a regular silicone drop. So for this, I'm just going to do 1 of those little teeny drops. Not very much at all. And I will be completely honest, I was not expecting that at all. But again, this is why we test. So I'm going to get my white. We're going to do the same thing here. A little bit of purple. We're going to do the opposite order this time just to give a little bit of, oh man, I'll make myself a mess is what I'm going to do. And then there's this white that has a little bit of silicone in it. Make sure you mix it up right before you put it in, otherwise the silicone rises to the surface and then turns into lumps. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing. And see how quickly that came out and how big it got? That's how you can tell that you have silicone. The other thing is you can actually see the silicone. See the silicone? You can see how quickly it popped up. Those are silicone cells. And then the other thing is what silicone does is it is a oil. And what happens when you put oil and water together? The oil rises to the top because it is less dense. And so the whole purpose is if I have silicone in here, it gets on and then it rises to the top and allows the other colors to show through. So here's the difference. I have silicone in the white, and you see all these that showed up. It doesn't really let the colors through because the silicone was never underneath. So I'm not getting silicone cells here because it was never underneath. So now we're going to do the exact same thing. I don't need this anymore. So we're going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to put, this is just over 2 ounces of paint. So each of these colors I'm going to put 1, 2, 3. So that's a drop. 1, 2, 3. So a drop. Drop. 1, 2, 3. So this would be 2 drops for, this is about 2.5 ounces of paint. And I did add a little bit more than I normally do just because I want to show you what happens here. I'm using the same mixing sticks for all of my different colors, thin, thick, medium, so I got to clean them off every time. You want to mix these really good. And a lot of people say you can mix a little bit or mix a lot and you'll get bigger and little cells. That isn't actually the case. If you leave it just on the top, obviously you're going to have bigger chunks of silicone and you'll get bigger cells there. But if you mix a lot, if you mix a little, I haven't found that it really makes a huge difference. I might have to do a specific test for that. But so again, let's do the same thing. Let's do a little bit of a test here. We'll mix up my order again. So now my colors have silicone in them, but my white does not. And these are still thin. So we do the same thing. So the difference here is going to be the silicone. We know the silicone is underneath the white and it's going to come up through. The reason why torching helps this is because, see how quickly those formed? That's the silicone coming up. Torching helps because when you heat up the surface of the paint, it breaks the surface tension. So the paint's holding on really tight. And when I heat the surface up, it makes those molecules move a little more. And so what's underneath, if it's trying to come up and it has a little binding, it kind of lets it spread out a little bit and that stuff to come up. But see how different these cells are? They have the little polka dot in the middle. It's because it's rising up through those colors, so it's grabbing a little bit of those colors every time as it pops up through. And that's the difference between just a regular swipe cell and a silicone cell. They also they grow so much faster. Because this is kind of a cell reactive paint, I don't want to call it a cell activator because that's something completely different. Because it's a cell reactive paint, I'm still going to get cells, but they're just going to be different now with silicone. So that was very thin paint. Just to show you again, this is making I wonder if I can see here better. This is making a mound and immediately going, it's not even making a mound, it's kind of making it a little tiny bit and then immediately going away. So this is medium thin consistency, not super thin. So that's the first test. The next test we're going to do is our very thick consistency. Oh, and I just spilled paint everywhere here. Okay, so next is the thick consistency paint, the original stuff that I did. So let's do the exact same thing. We're going to do a little bit. Actually, let's do red first here. You can tell how much thicker it is just watching it come out. Then we'll do my thick white. And then again, there's no silicone in any of this. So I'm going to grab my white, go over the other colors. Look here, I get almost no cell reaction. The paint's just too thick. See, I'm starting to get a little bit and those will grow a tiny bit, but I'm not going to get anywhere near this. Thick paint doesn't work really well, especially for naturally occurring cells. Now, again, I'm going to put these in here. Same thing, I'm going to do the exact same amount of silicone. So this would be essentially 2 drops, the equivalent of 2 drops. All right, so here we have our thick paint. Colors have silicone. We're going to swipe. And the reason why I don't get cells showing up so quickly is because the paint is just too thick. Even when I heat it up, which you'll see some pop up, even when I heat it up, it's too thick to let all of that stuff up through. See how I even get more cells than I do there? So last but not least, let's do the medium. So first, as we did before, I'll do some without any silicone. And while I give that a little bit of time, let me show you how. So this is mound upon a mound. Probably this way is going to give you the best look. Let me come over here. Mound upon a mound, and then going away. So this is medium consistency paint. So I'm getting about the same amount of cells as the thick paint. Although, see, when I get my flame down, then they're a little lower. Then once it breaks the surface tension, then all of those things can form better. That's why we use the torch. And I just got a little bit lower and broke. It's much easier to break the surface tension of thinner paints than it is of thicker paints. So still, I'm getting some good stuff, but I'm getting a lot of this white, which I don't want. And again, see here, right where the purple went, I don't get any. I got a little bit here. So starting to get a good amount there. And then now, same thing as before. And you can tailor how much silicone you have in each cup to really give you a good idea, or to really give you different results. Different paints are going to react differently, obviously. I'm honestly quite surprised at how well this is taking to even just regular swipes, but we're going to go back over and compare all of these in just a second. So again, I got my 2 drops of silicone. I'm going to mix in really good. Now let's do the same thing. Blue. possible. A little bit of my white with no silicone. And just like before, see how quickly you see the silicone pop up? Now this will just make a ton start. It's funny because of the silicone, the actual silicone mat underneath, the silicone went all the way to the ground, and so the silicone mat is showing there. Just interesting. But look at those nice cells, and I'm going to start to get cells out here. Look how much quicker they formed. Let's go in for close-up here. So here's my thin. That was my thin, no silicone. And with silicone in the white, with silicone in the colors. Then I did thick, no silicone, thick with silicone, medium no silicone, and medium with silicone. And many paints aren't going to react the same. To be perfectly honest, a lot of paints, Liquitex, Artist Loft, they don't generally react without silicone like this, so you'll get way less cells. But I haven't used the Creative Inspirations for a while, so I'm really glad I did this with it, because now I know that even with a little bit of silicone or with the right white, I can get some awesome swipes going. And here's the hole that I mentioned. See how it made a hole? There's just a puddle of silicone there. So the silicone drops is touching the silicone mat, so it's just pushing everything away. So overall, my favorite, I don't like using thin because everything just, it grows and grows and grows and then turns into a big puddle of gross. And as you tilt stuff off, you don't keep any of the cell formation. With thicker, with this paint, you could totally do it. But most paints thicker, you just get, you almost get it like this all the time, even with silicone, because the silicone doesn't have the strength to break through. You also need more paint to cover your canvas, because it's going to stay thicker on your canvas. But medium consistency, mound upon a mound, this is kind of the sweet spot for me. And just to show you, if I pull this up, I'm going to turn this way. If I pull this up, you can see how this moves. So one benefit of the thicker stuff is it holds the cells better. Even when it's moving, it's holding the cells, the medium's holding the cells. Sorry about that. But the really heavy didn't move as much. See, it didn't move as far, but it maintained the cells better. But if I did the same thing here on the thin, sorry about the glare there, but see how it just misforms everything? Just because it's so thin and it moves. Those cells were pretty initially, but now they're just like a blob. So now let's do a whole pour with just the medium silicone. All right, so now I have a canvas panel here. I have it on my cake spinner. And then I just have my Lollivife mat on top. Lollivife, sorry, I have said it too wrong for too many years. And again, we're going to use the medium consistency paint. I already have the silicone in it, I don't have to worry about that. So what I want to do is I just want this to be random. I'm going to spin it, so I should have plenty of paint here. And then I'm just using my cake spatula, and I'm just going to do a swipe like before. We'll do two. Guess I have to hold it here. And just because I know I'm going to get a ton of cells here and not near as much there, I'm going to move this down this way a little before I start. And we're going to use the torch a little. The more you torch, the more cells you're going to get. If you let the cells that are already there grow, they're probably going to be a little bit bigger than normal. I kind of want a lot of cells here, so we'll see. So now I'm just going to give that a second to mature, and then we'll roll it off. I just realized when I start spinning, this is just going to start shooting everywhere, so let's just get it down on my mat first. I love this. Yeah, and at times, if you get really close, you don't want to get close because you don't want to burn the stuff, but you can create clumps of cells. See, I got a little bit closer here, a little bit closer here. You can create clumps of cells by staying in one place for a little extra time. It's harder here because it's mostly white. Right, so I've left this. You can see how much it grew there. And now we're just going to spin a little bit. Let me get all this stuff out of the way so I don't spin onto my paints. I actually, from Lolly Beefy, I just bought a, I didn't realize they had this, but it's like a little spin pool, a 30-inch spin pool. So I'm excited to get that. I'll let you know how it goes. So we're just going to do a little spin here. Don't want to spin too hard. I like to spin cells because then it allows it to open up naturally and you don't get the weird lines when you're just trying to tilt them. I do want to move everything. You can see the weight of my paint is like right here. I just want to move it to that side of center so when I spin, it will kind of push out this way. I don't want to do it too much that it changes how these look. All right, let's try that. And again, I'm not spinning this very hard. You don't need to, put all your muscle into it. You have plenty of time. All right, I'm digging that. Just in case, I'm gonna get a little more torches here on the outside. Now, if you want to change how the cells look on your acrylic pour swipe, use a different tool. And I did a video here that shows you a comparison side by side of how cells form differently with different swiping tools.